Look at this door. Black paint, brass number 10. A policeman outside, nothing about it says temporary. And yet Britain has treated it like a revolving door. 7 prime ministers in 10 years. One of them lasted 49 days, shorter than a school term. Another announced his resignation the day before the 10th anniversary of the Brexit vote. The building stayed still. The institution stayed still. The people inside kept changing. Something broke in British politics, and it did not break all at once. It cracked on a single summer night in 2016 when 52% of voters chose leave, and the crack has been spreading ever since. So how does a country that once kept the same leader for more than a decade suddenly cannot keep one for 2 years? Who actually removes a British prime minister? Is it the voters at a general election, the party in a leadership contest, the markets when they panic? The answer is all three, but not in the order you might expect. Voters still matter, but lately, MPs have been firing leaders mid-term with increasing confidence. To see why that feels so strange, we need to measure what normal used to look like. From 1979 to 2016, Britain had 5 prime ministers in 37 years. Margaret Thatcher, John Major, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, David Cameron. Long premierships were the default, not the exception. Elections came. Governments fell sometimes. Scandals happened. But the office itself felt stable. You could argue about policy and still know who would be on the steps of Downing Street tomorrow. The door was not spinning. Compare that to what came next, and the contrast is almost violent, like switching from a long novel to a clip show. Here is the calm spelled out in time. Thatcher, 11 years, Blair, 10. Even the shorter stretches, Major at 6, Brown at 3, still measured in years, not weeks. Average tenure in that era, roughly 7 years per prime minister. A generation of voters could grow up knowing only one face on the news at 10 o'clock. That stability was not an accident of personality. It reflected broad party discipline, fewer structural shocks, and elections that usually decided the question. That era is now history, not ancient history, recent history. Many adults alive today remember nothing else. David Cameron arrived in 2010, fresh from a coalition with the Liberal Democrats, then a small Conservative majority in 2015. He faced a party that had argued about Europe for decades. His gamble: promise a referendum on European Union membership, win it, settle the argument, move on. He campaigned to remain. On the 23rd of June 2016, Britain voted to leave 52 to 48% on 72% turnout. 17.4 million people voted leave. Cameron resigned the next morning. The first domino fell, and it knocked over every leader who followed. The ballot paper was simple: remain or leave. The consequences were not. England and Wales voted leave. Scotland and Northern Ireland voted remain. A country that had been in the European project for more than 40 years chose to walk out. Look at the map. Not one uniform color, but a split island, different nations, different majorities, one binding result. And from that moment, every prime minister's job description changed. You were no longer only running the country. You were running the exit, or failing to. Brexit did not end on referendum night. It became the job. Cameron had been prime minister for 6 years, respectable by any normal standard, but the referendum was not normal. Having lost the vote he called, he could not credibly negotiate Brexit. His authority was gone the instant the result was read. Theresa May, his Home Secretary, took over in July 2016. The revolving door had spun once. It would not stop. Notice the mechanism. He was not defeated at an election. His own side made him go because the country had answered a question he asked, and answered wrong for his career. May triggered Article 50 in March 2017, starting the formal 2-year exit clock. She tried to pass a withdrawal deal. Parliament rejected it 3 times. Her own party split between hard Brexiteers who wanted a cleaner break and those who feared economic damage. She survived a confidence vote, lost a constitutional battle in the Supreme Court over prorogation, and limped on until the 29th of May 2019, when she announced she would resign. 3 years in office. Zero resolution on the central question. The problem was too big for one negotiator, and her party would not let her change the answer. In between, she had called a snap election, gambling for a bigger majority to push Brexit through. She lost her majority instead. The Conservatives fell from 331 seats to 318. Labour surged under Jeremy Corbyn. The Conservatives fell back on Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party for confidence and supply. What was meant to strengthen her hand weakened it. The pattern repeats in this story. A prime minister calls an election to fix their problems, and the problems grow teeth. Without a secure majority, every Brexit vote became a cliff edge. When May left, Boris Johnson was waiting. He had been the face of the Leave campaign. He promised to get Brexit done with or without a deal. The party wanted a fighter, not a negotiator trapped in Westminster gridlock. May's tearful farewell outside Downing Street was not theatre. It was the admission that Brexit had consumed another premiership. She had done the work. She could not carry the party. Johnson arrived with energy and a very different theory of how forceful a prime minister should be. Johnson won a landslide in December 2019, 365 seats, an 80-seat majority, the best Conservative result since Margaret Thatcher's heyday. Britain left the EU at 11 p.m. on the 31st of January 2020. For a moment, the door seemed to stop spinning. He had a mandate. He had delivered the referendum's result. Then came the pandemic, Partygate, and a slow erosion of trust inside his own party. The Brexit question was closed. The competence question opened, and that question would prove just as lethal. More than 50 ministers resigned in 48 hours in July 2022. Johnson announced he would step down. He had lasted 3 years long by post-Brexit standards, short by the old normal. The Conservatives turned to their members again. They chose Liz Truss. The mechanism matters. This was a spill, not an election. MPs decided the leader had become a liability faster than voters could. That is the new normal Britain imported, remove the captain while the ship is still at sea. Truss lasted 49 days, the shortest premiership in British history. Her mini-budget unfunded tax cuts announced on the 23rd of September 2022 spooked the gilt market, crashed the pound, and destroyed her authority in days, not months. Mortgage rates jumped. The Bank of England intervened. The previous record for a short tenure was George Canning in 1827, 119 days before he died in office. Truss beat him without dying. She simply ran out of party support, and the markets had already voted. Rishi Sunak stabilized the books. He was careful, technocratic, unflashy, the anti-Truss. Markets calmed. But he inherited 14 years of Conservative rule and a cost-of-living crisis. He called an election in July 2024 rather than wait. Labour won a landslide, 412 seats to 121. Sunak left. The door spun again, this time because voters, not MPs, had had enough. For one beat, it looked like instability might end with a decisive electoral verdict. Keir Starmer promised stability after chaos. Labour's manifesto was deliberately boring: competence, growth, repair. The electorate rewarded it: 412 seats, Conservative collapse, reforms surging in places Labour once took for granted. It looked like the revolving door might finally stop. Starmer had a huge majority and until 2029 before he had to call another election. The mandate was real. The question was whether he could keep his own party on board long enough to use it. 18 months later, on the 22nd of June 2026, Starmer announced he would resign as Labour leader. Polls had collapsed. More than 100 Labour MPs had lost confidence. He remains caretaker prime minister while the party chooses a successor, likely by September. He is the shortest-serving Labour prime minister in history. The landslide did not buy stability. It bought a longer fuse, and the fuse still burned. Britain prepares for its seventh prime minister since the Brexit referendum. Is Britain unique? Not quite. Australia, same Westminster system, had 6 prime ministers in 11 years between 2007 and 2018. Labour and Liberal leaders were removed by spill votes without general elections. Commentators called Australia the coup capital of the democratic world. Britain imported that spill culture, but added Brexit, a 49-day premiership, and a landslide government that imploded in under 2 years. Same constitutional family. Same growing willingness to swap leaders when polls turned sour. People say Britain became the new Italy. Headlines love the comparison. Italy did have constant government turnover under proportional representation and fragile coalitions, governments that fell when arithmetic failed. Britain's churn is different. Single-party governments, internal leadership revolts, and one structural shock, Brexit, that poisoned every conservative leader after Cameron. Italy's mechanism is parliamentary arithmetic. Britain's, lately, is party panic. The comparison is catchy. The diagnosis is not identical. History rhymes. 7 prime ministers between 1827 and 1835. 7 between 1922 and 1937. Now 6 since 2016, with a 7th incoming. The interwar churn came from depression and realignment. Today's churn comes from referendum fallout, market crises, and leadership spills. George Canning's 119 days stood for 2 centuries as the shortest tenure, until Liz Truss's 49. The door keeps turning because the problems outlast the people sent to solve them. So look at the door again. Black paint, brass 10. It has not moved. The building has not moved. What moves is the person inside, chosen by party, checked by parliament, judged by markets and voters, and now removed by their own side with increasing speed. Britain did not lose democracy. It lost the long premiership, that stretch of years when policy arguments did not automatically become leadership crises. And until something resolves the forces that started on that June night in 2016, the revolving door at number 10 may keep spinning.